All right, let's do a quick sound check. Thank you, Darrell. As per usual, a great introduction. Covered all the bases to get us going. Um, thanks. Awesome. Yeah, we got the date correct and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it looks like more tweets going out. 5% tariff on Mexico. The Mexican peso is plunging, so it is a great time to go to Mexico. If you've got dollars, buy pesos because they're at a record cheap price as of right now. So we will dive in now. I guess first question for you guys, and I know some of you were on this last time. I'm going to be covering, it's kind of going through a lot of the same stuff, but I just want to make sure I'm answering questions. There's some updated slides. I've got some news on the scanners and radar screen and stuff like that as well. But just out of curiosity, how many people in here, this is their first time seeing this webinar? You did not see the one I did last week. You did not see the replay. This is kind of like your first rodeo seeing it. Okay, so I just go to so a lot of first timers. Okay, great. So I just wanted to make sure I didn't want to like rush through it if folks had not seen it before. And then of course we've got some updates to it if you saw it last time, and we'll stick around, answer questions and stuff like that as well. So let's just dive right in. I'm not going to dive into the story very much. I'm just going to do the summary, but I talk about this story in my book, Mastering the Trade, but it really just sets the stage of how I came about to trade the way that I do today. And the short version is that I lived up in Minnesota. I had a job transfer there. My fiance went with me. And at that point, I was on my third account. I'd been trading for 8 years, and I got pretty good at taking accounts from 10K to about 120K. And then from there, I would take $20,000 out, put it into rental real estate, and then I'd try to make $1 million, and then boom, it would just crash. And then I'd get back to 10K again. I'd do it again. I'd take 20K out and then buy some rental real estate and do it again. So I was on my third account, and my third account, I got it up to 150K. And for about a year, I was trading it for weekly income, and I was doing great. It was consistent. And I was like a hair's breadth away of having the confidence to quit my job and just trade full time. So what happened was I got a transfer to Minnesota. My fiance, now wife, was up with me. It was really snowing. We lived in an apartment. It was just, she couldn't handle it. She's like, look, we just need to get a house. And so we found a house, and they needed 30K for the down payment. And I showed them, I'm like, okay, I'll take that out of my trading account. And then as we approached the closing date, I actually really got a little messed up psychologically, because like, okay, if I do this, my trading account's going to be 120K, and then I'm going to be trying to get back to 150K, and then to get back to consistency, and that's probably going to mess me up. So why don't I just do a big trade, get my account to 180K, and then I take out 30K for the house, and I'm back to 150K, and then I could just quit. I mean, at that point, I just needed the job for the income so I could buy the house, and I'd be on my way. Well, what I did is I put my entire account into some OEX puts because it looked like the market was rolling over. The market rallied for like a week. I was a deer in headlights. My $150,000 account went to $8,000, and I didn't have enough money to buy the house. Now, I did not tell my wife. I ended up maxing out credit cards so I could get the money to buy the house. So we ended up buying the house. The closing was a little hairy. But I got to tell you, I went through a lot of soul searching at that point, because like, I can't do this. I cannot put, if we're going to have kids and stuff like that, I can't have uncertainty like that. And I didn't trade for about 4 months. And a couple things happened. One, I came across Mark Douglas's book, The Disciplined Trader, and then, which was amazing. And then two, from talking to broker friends of mine, I was able to mentor with other traders and to sit with them for like a week at a time. And I learned a lot. And the summary was, what I learned through all that is that when I focused first and foremost on the setups and the timing, and that's it, then I made money. But when I focused on the money, I naturally incorporated all the bad habits that causes traders to lose money. So it took me 8 years for that to sink in. And so a lot of what we do today is just kind of like, look, I don't want anybody to go through that nightmare that I went through. And as we kind of go through and we develop tools, and of course I'm using the tools, but it's also just being able to share them and say, hey, I don't want you to have to go through this and try to explain to your spouse or your fiance that you just blew the house money, because that sucks. So, and I also am a big believer that there is no work-life balance or trading life balance. I mean, life is life, and I'm kind of, I like to travel with my family a lot. This was something we did an Africa trip with Richard Branson, which was kind of fun. Bring in interesting characters to talk to. This is great. I'm explaining to a kid in Africa what I do for a living. Dylan's heard this before, and he's like, Dad, you're killing me. And of course, I like to trade and bring in my dogs and stuff like that too. So, I mean, it's just, it all kind of blends together. So for those of you, if you've seen anything that I do, and if this is the first time, that's fine too, you'll find that one of my favorite setups is called a squeeze. And the squeeze is simply identifying high probability moments in time when we're setting up for just a concentrated move. Okay, so what's a concentrated move? Markets chop around about 80% of the time. All right, now it doesn't seem like they do, but they do. We'll look at this on the next chart. But they have what I call focused conviction-backed moves only 20% of the time. Okay, so yeah, we could be going up, down, but then there's a conviction move to the downside or a conviction move to the upside. And that's where you can actually really make some solid money if you're trading options. And of course, you could just trade the stock or trade the currency or whatever it is you're looking at. But the squeeze helps to pinpoint that 20% of the time for solid profits. And I've learned to basically stay away from a market if there is not a squeeze in play from a directional perspective. So here's a quick example of a squeeze. So on this one, here's a squeeze. We got the consolidation. We're getting ready for a bigger move. And in this case, I buy some of the 250 calls and 270 calls and then flip it out for $23,000. So, again, the stock didn't, the stock moved about, I think, 5%, but a 5% move in the stock is enough for the options to go up about 130%. All right. So that's what I really like about the squeeze, is it just identifies those moments in time. And you can see right here, there's also a squeeze, and you can see all of a sudden we go from choppy to a focused move. That's very, very playable. All right. Yeah. And if you guys, for those of you that are just seeing the starting slide, you may just have to log out and log back in. Or just refresh the page, but yeah, because we're cruising right along and we're on slide number 6. So the squeeze is the most versatile trading tool I've ever come across in all my years of trading. I use it on stocks, options, futures. I can use it for position trading, swing trading, day trading. It really is all encompassing, and you can just adapt it to your lifestyle, adapt it to the trading that you like to do, adapt it to the time frames that you like to do. So if you are, working full time, you're not going to be trading a 5-minute chart. You're going to wait for the signal on a daily chart, right? And that's fine. So not only does it pinpoint moments in time when you can look forward to a greater than expected move, but it also works well and complements many other trading tools and systems. Okay, in sum, it is my favorite tool, and I can't look at a chart without it. I feel naked without it. So squeezes are nice for home runs. That occasional home run certainly adds nice quantities of capital to your account. And of course, not every squeeze works. It's about a 75% win rate, although you can increase that by adding a few extra kickers to it, which we'll talk about. And, and not every squeeze is a grand slam home run, but it is the most consistent strategy I've found for isolating potential home runs. And what I found is that, when you get something like this that's a home run, okay, you may, the next trade, maybe it just does what I just call a normal move. So maybe you make 30% on the option, right? That's not bad. It's not like 150%, but it's still not bad. It's like a little blip instead of this big move. And so part of this is just kind of knowing like when to hang on for the ride, when to kind of ease out of it due to the loss of momentum. So the issue with this is that the big squeezes, on the daily charts and above, just don't happen very much. In fact, the biggest squeezes that I watch happen on monthly charts, and they only happen about one time every 3 to 5 years. But when they happen, they're huge. All right. And so all of this got me to thinking maybe there is a better signal. All right, so before we get into that, let's take a few steps back and just take a look at a couple of things. So this is a chart of Momo, okay? And if you remember before, I was talking about, just chop. So if you look right here, you may think like, oh my gosh, this thing is moving great, but really anywhere you got in here was chop. Okay, chop, 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 and really chop, 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 chop. Yeah, if you were in here and you exited here, great, that was a focused move. If you're in here and got out here, that's a focused move. Chop, 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 chop. Oh, there's a focused move, right? So the chop there is actually much more common than people think. And so what I found though is that I found this by accident, is that if I get into a stock when the Bollinger Bands are expanding, typically my trade is not going to work out, okay? However, if I get into a stock when the Bollinger Bands have contracted, my odds of success have increased exponentially. So here you can see a moment in time when the Bollinger Bands have contracted, when they've contracted, when they've contracted. Of this entire chart, those are the only 3 instances where I'd be interested in entering a trade. All this other stuff is just chop. It's noise. And the reason they call it chop is because it's going to chop you up. And also, if you don't have those high probability moments in time, what happens is that you automatically fall into this trap of this. And a lot of times people think like, oh yeah, I'm kind of catching this. But when there's a choppy market, there's still these ebbs and flows. It's like, oh, I'm getting in. I've got this euphoria. I'm going to make money. It's going to be a big move. And all it is an ebb and flow, but you can't tell until it's too late. And by the time you realize like, oh my God, and you get out and then it turns back higher, and it's just this ebb and flow thing that's just kind of a nightmare if you're not aware of it. But if you are aware of it, you can actually use it to your advantage. But just be warned, if you're not aware of this, this is what you're naturally going to do. It's what you're naturally going to get sucked into. It's just how the human mind works in relation to the market. So the awesome thing about all this is that when the Bollinger Bands contract, this represents a compression of volatility. And what this means is that whatever you're looking at, and yeah, this does work great on currencies. Like I'm trading it on the dollar index right now. Dollar index on a weekly chart has a huge squeeze. So dollar strong, so euro lower, Aussie dollar, lower, all that stuff. It's impacting it across the board. And the thing about it is, this compression of volatility can only stay quiet for so long. It's literally building up energy, getting ready to pop higher or implode lower once the Bollinger Bands stop contracting and start their expansion phase again. Okay, once they stop contracting and start their expansion phase again, that's super important. So this gives us a huge advantage in terms of timing. 80% of the time, market movement is random and is lacking conviction. There is no reason to risk your cash unless the odds are strongly in your favor. Okay. Yeah. And if you even look at, what's going on in the markets right now, so you can see that we had a squeeze here setting up. Now, of course, we had a tweet, but you could see it was short, and, boom, we came down, Mexico tariffs and stuff like that too. But it's interesting here. You got a nice little long here, nice little long here, nice little long here. And so it's interesting, even on a 5-minute chart of the S&Ps. But even if you come over here and say, well, great, let's look at a monthly chart and see what's going on, you'll notice here that there's actually a big monthly squeeze setting up here. Okay, the last monthly squeezes here had a huge move higher this time and a huge move higher here. Now this one could end up firing short, which would mean the markets would implode for a while. But as of right now, the momentum, believe it or not, even with all the nastiness out there, the momentum is still above zero on that chart. So this is what the squeeze looks like. So the squeeze essentially is the normal squeeze when you see a red dot. Now, this is what I call a 1-dot squeeze, and I kind of don't pay attention to them because honestly, I'll miss that. I'm like, I didn't even see that. So I'll dismiss the 1-dot squeeze because I tend not to see it. What I love are these squeezes that have at least 5 dots. All right, those to me are the ones that have the best momentum. So you got 5-dot squeeze, you have a compression of the Bollinger Bands, and those are your entries. Okay, so that's what I'm looking for. And this is just with the regular squeeze. And with this regular squeeze, Momo is a stock that I used to like to trade quite a bit, and this was a trade that I did using that. And this is just an example that you can buy the stock. In this case, this is obviously a larger account. I like the number 7, so I bought 7,777 shares of stock. But of course, if you're buying that much stock, that's going to cost a lot of money. 7,000 shares at $42 a share is a lot of money. However, you can buy 100 options at $5.30. That's going to be $50,000 instead of, like 1/10 the cost, right? And of course, and if you traded 10 contracts, that would be $5,000. And if you traded one contract, that would just be $500. So you can trade a contract to fit your account size. But in this case, you're capturing that concentrated move, and in this case, capturing the profit. So with options like this, the key is you want to get in and you want to get out and not risk too much of that theta decay. So when you get the timing right, basically you are answering the question of what is the biggest barrier to enjoying solid gains with options, and that is simply timing. When you get the time and direction right, you can do beautiful things with leverage. If you get the time and direction wrong, leverage is definitely a double-edged sword and will cut you pretty nasty. But when you get that time and direction right, you can do beautiful things. Now, leverage, what I like is when you buy an option, okay, the nice thing is that your risk is 100% fixed. So you can risk, if you're like, oh, you know what, I don't want to risk more than $500. Great. You can establish it so that no matter what happens, the worst that can happen is that you lose $500. All right. So that's the beauty of options, is you can absolutely pinpoint your maximum risk that you'd want to do on a trade. Now, here's where this got kind of interesting. So I like the squeeze. So that's the squeeze. So on this weekly chart of the spiders, there are 2 solid squeeze signals. All right. So this one, it was 3 dots. It wasn't quite 5. But that's fine. Over the course of 3 weeks, because remember, it's a weekly chart, there's plenty of time to look at that. And you can see that that was a fantastic move higher. And then here in towards the end of June, here's another squeeze, and that's a fantastic move higher. But as I'm looking at this, I'm like, I see this move, I see this move, I see this move, and I'm like, where are the squeezes? Where is the love? Shouldn't those also pop up on there? Okay, so the question is like, all right, so what settings work best in terms of the most signals with the highest probability of working out? What settings show that a really potentially big move is shaping up above and beyond the settings I've been using for 15 years? And last, what settings could give us a heads up that a normal squeeze is about to set up so we could actually get in early? All right, so we started playing around with settings and we looked at 12 different ones. So you'll notice here with this new setting, or at least one of the new settings, where there was no love here and no love here and no love here, suddenly you have a clean signal. Suddenly you have a clean signal, and suddenly you have a clean signal. So if we go one step further here, you can kind of dive in and see that not only do we have 3 additional at-bats here, 3 additional fairly clean at-bats. Now, this wasn't a great move, okay? Is it still playable? Is it still profitable? Yes, it wasn't a great move. This was a great move, okay? This was a great move. So those were solid, and the normal squeeze absolutely missed them. In addition, you'll see that there's the normal squeeze here. This one's giving you a heads up. Hey, guess what? Something's setting up here, so you may want to get ready. And then when these two come together, it's like a double whammy. Okay, that's kind of nice. Same thing here. Heads up, double whammy. All right, so that's pretty sweet in and of itself. So as I really started understanding this, I really started to wonder, gosh, there's some big moves out there that really did not give, because a lot of my scans are based on the squeeze. And if the squeeze doesn't come up, I just miss the move. And I was like, you know what, that's starting to get frustrating, because I know there's a lot of big moves out there that I'm not necessarily seeing. So if you look at this, what's great is this is a daily chart of XLI. So you can see here, it's like no squeeze here with the current setting, totally visible setting there. 2-dot squeeze, kind of hard to see, plenty of heads up here. Here's a big move down, the 1-dot squeeze. I never even see those. Beautiful 5-dot squeeze. Plenty of time to set up. No signal at all here. Beautiful new signal here. All right, so suddenly I'm getting more at bats and more high probability focused move trading opportunities. All right, so that's pretty awesome. So, and she likes it too. So this was a great find. Made me super excited, but I also wondered, are there rare instances we should know about so that we could be prepared the few times that they occur? So again, playing around with these settings, it's like, all right, so a lot of the settings were but that setting was fairly fantastic. Okay. And and so then I want to know, is there another setting where it's like, okay, where is there something that's going to tell us that could be even more explosive? So the second setting is right here. So here you can see it's like, great, we got the heads up, we got the normal squeeze, and then we got what I call is just a really high and tight ba-boom. All right. Now here we didn't get it. We still got a good move. Here we didn't get it. You know, it's still obviously a good move. But the times that this does show up, I want to know about it, because you potentially have the potential for like the best move that you're going to get. All right. And so I do like that kind of added factor there. And you can see here, Shopify. This is a stock that I love, and this is one we've been playing. And you can say it's like, okay, not only did we get a regular squeeze, but we got the heads up here, and boom. What happened? We go from $200 to $275 in about 2 weeks. Or let's call it 3 weeks. Here's the NASDAQ futures on a 30-minute chart. Okay, so right here, here's a solid move. We're dropping 40 points. No signal with the normal squeeze, but a beautiful signal on the updated settings. And in this case here, we actually had all three. And when you get all three working together, you typically get a bigger, more concentrated move. Okay. So long story short, I love that. I did not love looking at all three squeezes. And so I said, Eric, if you could help me clean this up, I would be most appreciated. Eric loves a challenge. So what he did is he ended up taking all three of these and combining them into what we call the new Squeeze Pro. Okay, so you can see here that the Squeeze Pro incorporates, you've got the new squeeze there, you've got the old setting there, and then if the really, really tight setting shows up, it'll pop there as well. Okay, so again, a couple more examples here. You can see at point number one, solid regular squeeze. Guess what? You had plenty of a heads up here. Here was a great movement into it. No signal here. Nice signal here. Another movement into it. No signal here. Nice signal here. So what I'm finding here is that not only are these super accurate, but you're getting more fat pitches. Okay, more at bats. If you like, in baseball, I played baseball in high school, and the idea is like, if you got a fat pitch, you know, it was one that was just kind of right down the middle and not too fast, not curving. It's just a, you know, just a nice grapefruit that you can kind of hit where you want it, which is great. One dot squeeze here. I hate one dot squeezes. Oh, heads up. Okay. One dot squeeze, heads up. No signal. Nice signal. Okay. And it goes on and on and on, capturing 40, 50% more trades. All right. Another example there in PAYC. TLT, this is one we've been talking about recently, where in the bond market here, in a regular signal, you've got no signal at all in the regular squeeze, but in the Squeeze Pro, this teed it up perfectly. And we've almost been going straight up from $123 up to $130 on TLT. Here's a 30-minute chart of the S&Ps from yesterday. So you've got regular buy signal here, okay? And I'll talk about these arrows. Super tight buy signal there and a buy signal there. Now, it wasn't much of a move. It drifted higher by about 12 to 15 points, but then, boom, sell signal, le puke. So it is a good way that even if you don't trade the S&P futures, if you watch these during the day with this complete system on a 30-minute chart, it's going to give you a sense of where the stock market is going. And if you know where the stock market is going, obviously you can make some decisions with your stocks, okay? And here's Honeywell. Again, just when I think this is the last example here where it's like with the Squeeze Pro. Here you have black and red combined. Sweet. Just black. Okay, that wouldn't even shown up on the regular squeeze. Just black wouldn't have even shown up. This was a regular squeeze with a little bit of a heads up. Only signal here was the new squeeze. All right. Boom. Boom. So again, nice V-shaped move that you caught with the new squeeze, totally missed it with the old one. Here you had a combo. Okay. And so all good stuff there. So that got me excited. So I liked all this and I said, hey, Eric, can we do more? Because one of the common questions I get is, I like the squeeze, John. It makes sense visually. I get it. But how do I get in? How do I know when to get in? And so I wanted to add some extra tools to this to help with the timing, okay? And so we added basically a formula here to say the odds are, once you get 5 dots, the odds are that this thing's going to go higher. So if you've got this on your chart, this is a daily chart of Apple, and you see this, it's like, oh, I should probably get long here. All right. It's like, okay. And then if you're looking at this squeeze going like, oh, this is telling you that you've got a sell signal, not only with the new squeeze, but with the old squeeze. Even though it's rallying, it's telling you, hey, be careful. This is a sell. And then you can see, obviously, this turned into a huge El Puco. Long signal, long signal. All right. So that's what I kind of like, because then all of a sudden visually, all right, that this was something that I thought was pretty interesting. And here's another stock that I like, Boom, Boom. So this is one, we're long this one right now, and that was a 1 dot arrow. That's nice. And here you had all 3 come up, boom, boom, boom. And when you see something like that, you can be fairly confident. And in fact, Boom has actually held up pretty well, even with all the trade talk and trade bluster and stuff like that. Okay. And of course, I do like daily charts. They're kind of my go-to. Sell signal for Google, buy signal for Google, buy signal for Google, buy signal for Google. And again, it didn't even show up in the old squeeze. But I love also like the monthly charts. And you can see on the Qs right now, we actually have a massive squeeze setting up on the monthly chart. That's just the new squeeze. Okay. You can see the last squeeze here, nice buy signals, bada boom, right? New squeeze here, buy signal, bada boom. Short signal, buy signal. So this buy signal kind of sucked, right? But it was a nice grind higher, whereas these two were pretty solid. And you can see, of course, right now there's a lot of weakness in the market. It's kind of scary. This was, the markets haven't pulled back very much, and we have another squeeze setting up. So this will be interesting, just obviously to see how it plays out. IWM, and I love this one because not only are you sitting there going like, okay, we got a short squeeze here, and that was the old signal. Great. Saw that one. Now, these were 4 dots, so I like to get at least 5 dots before we see a signal, before we get an arrow, but these still resolve themselves in the direction of the momentum. Here we got double buy signal, all right, so that was kind of nice. Another double buy signal, all right. Now here, we didn't get the sell signal because, again, I like at least 5 dots, but we can clearly see here the 4 dots, the momentum, it triggers short. And what I love about this, you might look at that and say, oh, there was never time to get in. If you draw a straight line here to even the day that it triggers short, you got plenty of time to get in, right? You get in on this weekly chart, and we trade sideways here for like 4 weeks, and then it just pukes. And so these things are pretty powerful. And you can use it on a 5-minute chart as well. So if you like to day trade futures, here's a squeeze and there's the sell, boom. Here's a squeeze, double sell. Okay, again, not a huge move, but tradable. Long trade, again, not a huge move, but a good 5 points on a 5-minute chart. Very sweet sell signal, totally the new squeeze, right? Old squeeze would have missed it. Double buy signal here, ba-boom. All right, so again, very sweet on all time frames. So again, basically, this is a new and improved squeeze strategy. So I told Eric I was very happy with this. It was a job well done. I will talk more about this in a second, but as I started to calculate this, I was appalled at my collective lost profits over the years by not having that. So we're going to talk about that, because how do you measure this going forward? But basically, this combination created a great new and updated trading strategy and system that would improve my trading right away. So then, unfortunately, I went to bed, and Eric thought his job was done, and I woke up with new ideas. Okay, and I was like, hey, Eric, I got some more ideas. And Eric kind of smiled and waved like the penguins of Madagascar. I'm like, no, seriously, please do this. And he's like, all right. So the first thing he did is, I do have a tool that we created a couple years ago called the Early In and Out. So I wanted him to update that for the Squeeze Pro. So this encompassed having to rip its guts out, completely rebuilding it, and adding in all of the new parameters. All right, this was a mess. It took a while. So as you can see here, what's nice about this is that the bars basically mimic the momentum down here. Okay, so you can see up here, it's like, wow, this is going higher, but it's losing momentum, right? So That's important. We're going to come back to that. But the first thing is that if you see green dots, it means the squeeze is about to fire. So if you're sitting there and you're watching this, you're going, gosh, I don't know if I want to get in. This is telling you, hey, man or woman, heads up, the move is fixing to go. All right. So if you're not, as we say down here in Texas, it's fitting to go. If you are not in this, you are about to miss out. And indeed, here we go and we fire. Okay. So what's nice about this is that it tells you, hey, it's fixing to go. It's fixing to go. There it goes. So sometimes you're sitting there going like, God, when is this thing going to fire? When is this thing going to fire? And this is telling you, and what's nice, because when you see that, that's kind of when you want to make sure if you're going to have a full position, do it then, because once it takes off, it's really hard to get in. All right. And so I really, really like that. Another good example here, this is a 78-minute chart of the S&Ps. We got 3 buy signals, but man, it's just boring, 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 boring. It's squeezing, it's squeezing, it's squeezing. Oh, fitting to go, fitting to go. And then it goes. All right. Same thing here. Short, short, short. 78-minute chart. An hour goes by, another hour, another hour, another hour, another hour. Oh, it's fixing to go, fixing to go, fixing to go. Get ready, and le plonk. All right. So I really did like that. And then from there, okay, and this is a chart of McDonald's here. Same thing here. So again, more, you get the arrows. You get the arrows, and it's like, if you're not in it, you better get in it, right? You get the arrow. If you're not in it, you better get in it. And so I like that because it's like it's kind of a confirmation that's getting ready to go. Now, the other part of this is that, so you get that early warning that the squeeze is going to go. But what I also like about this is that you get the early warning that this momentum is going to change. This is really important. So here's how you do the squeeze. Technically, you try to get in early, you scale out, and you hold on to the last piece until you get 2 bars of momentum that have changed. Okay, that's been the old way to do it. But now what I'm doing is like, this is saying, hey, heads up, okay, that momentum is fitting to change. All right, so it's like, instead of getting out here, go ahead and get out here, because the momentum, although you're still seeing it as rising, it's actually getting ready to roll over. Okay, same thing right here. Here's Ulta, it's a short, and you're like, man, this is great. But it's like, oh, guess what? The momentum, even though it's red here, it's actually getting ready to turn. And when these things turn, they race higher. The other beauty of this is that if you're watching this going like, man, I should short, and it turns yellow, oh my gosh, that's the worst idea ever. So it does keep you out of trouble as well. Okay. Another great example here. So, 2-hour chart of the S&Ps, we're shorting, it's fitting to go, we're going. And then at point number 1, we get out. Okay, now notice the momentum here is still red, but if we had waited for a normal exit signal, okay, it would have gone 20 points against us before we got out. So that saved us 20 points right there before our exit. Okay, same thing here. Let's get in, it's going. Up, momentum change, let's get out here. Old way is we get out here. And again, another 20 points of loss. So it tells you just to get out, because there's not going to be much upside from there. So that's another thing that I really like about it. So very solid and helpful. So the second part I asked Eric about was the stats, because I really was going, Eric, I've been looking at this and I can already tell that I've left a lot of money on the table in the form of lost profits by not having had access to these signals in the past. Now, I want to take for 2 reasons. I want to fully understand the amount of pain and suffering that I'm experiencing with this, but 2, I want to be able to get some statistical information that I can use on these squeezes so I can maximize my opportunities with knowledge. So how this works, and you can sit here and just say like, okay, great. Now here's the normal squeeze right here. And it's just saying like, look, if you look at a daily chart over 20 years on the spiders, there have been 122 squeezes, 71 have fired long, 51 have fired short. The average squeeze has been 6 dots. The average squeeze run has been 5 dots. with the longest being 14. But here's the kicker. The average post-squeeze move is $4.64. Yes, there was one that was $40, and that's an anomaly. The average is $4. So when I see that, it's like, okay, if we get a $4 move, I'm going to take off half and move my stop to break even because we just made the average move. If it's gonna go higher, great, but I'll use this change in momentum as an exit signal, but I might as well take the easy money off the table when it's sitting there right in front of me. Okay, so I just thought that was great. So we played around with this because obviously we needed to see all of it. So the first rendition of this, to see all the settings, that's an eyesore. It's a cluster. So, it's like, my wife comes out and she's got 17 different pairs of earrings on, and she's like, which one do you like the best? I'm like, oh my God, I don't know, because my brain is confused. And that's what I'm seeing there. And so it's like, all right, how do we trim this down? And so what Eric did is he said, okay, if you want to just see the summary, okay, if you just want to see the key stats, here they are. So you got the low setting, the mid setting, and the high setting, okay? And then if you want to see the details for each one, you can keep them down here and you can keep them organized. I was like, awesome. I can work with that. And so I could do here is just say, great. Now, here's a daily chart of Google. I can see that over the past 20 years, there have been 80 long setups on that setting and 51 shorts with an average move of $42.88. At the mid setting, the red dot, you've had 47 longs and 34 shorts with an average on of $40, et cetera, et cetera. It's like, okay, now this is giving me some information I can use, but it's good for whatever time frame that you are looking at. Okay, so here's a 2-hour chart of the NASDAQ. Guess what? On the normal setting, there's been 67 long settings over the last year and 42 shorts with an average run of 68 points. That is pretty legit. So now you can see, gosh, if I see a 2-hour squeeze and I get a sell signal, there's a potential move there of 68 points. Now, if you don't trade the NASDAQ futures, here's a hint. This is where, it's like, oh, if I've got a 2-hour squeeze that's setting up the short side of the NASDAQ, that's also going to drive technology stocks down. So you could buy puts on Google. You could sell call credit spreads on Google. You could play that a different way or buy puts on the Qs. But the main point is that now you have that knowledge of how those markets move. Okay. And so this is kind of how I like it, where I can have the quick summary at the top and say, great, I can see on the spiders here, and then I can dig into more detail down here. So this becomes a complete trading system. So I really like this info. And so the next question is like, how does it work with other stuff? And so like I recently did a class on growing a small account, right? And the squeeze was a key part of it, as were a group of other tools. Now, for anyone who took the small lot class, guess what? The Squeeze Pro and the buy sell arrows work great with this. So here's a chart of QLYS. This is as of right now. This is one that doesn't really care what the tariffs are. So we got a new squeeze here. All right, new squeeze signal, doesn't even have the old one. We got a buy arrow. All right, we've got, it's no early warning yet. We got the momentum bars here, and we got our stats. We can see that over, this case on a 30-minute chart of the last 180 days, we can see that the average run here are about $1.16 on a 30-minute chart. And then, of course, we could also look at a daily chart if we wanted to hold it even longer. So I like that, combination of a 30-minute chart there to, potentially for a shorter term trade. But if you do like a potential move like on a daily chart, so here's a live version of the daily chart right here. And we can see on the daily chart over the last 10 years, and of course, this is a newer stock, at that setting, we've had 31 long squeezes and 20 shorts, and an average move has been about $7. Okay, and an average move here is $6. So from here, a $6 move would take us to about $96. All right, and that would line up with about right here. So $96 can be our target on there, and we can hold that with confidence based on that average move. Okay, so that's pretty good there. So long story short, I love the new settings. It turns the regular squeeze from a solid indicator into an improved, souped up signal and complete trading system that works on any market on any time frame. And one thing I didn't mention last time, because we didn't know if we could do it, yes, you can scan. So if you have Thinkorswim, we have developed, and I'll be talking about these on Saturday, scans for these. So we got the new code in there. okay? And we can come in here and say, great, I've got a couple of scans and I'm building out more that I like here. So I want to look for, squeeze pros highs, 10% of new highs. So guess what? Here's Disney, ZTS, and a couple ones like that. It's like, all right, great. So we can come over here and say, oh, look at this. Here's Disney. We got a 1 dot, super tight squeeze. We got a regular squeeze, and we got this one. So that's popping up in the scanner. And so the arrows are color coded for the squeeze. So a black arrow lines up with the black squeeze, red arrow with the red squeeze, and then the orange arrow with the orange squeeze. And then, so same thing here. So I'll have various of these scans kind of set up. Also, we're getting it so you can look at it if you have TradeStation, so you can look at it in radar screen. All right. And if you guys have already got the class, those will all be included in there on Saturday. So, BSX, this is one that's popping up on there as well. So the message here, and what I like about this, because at the end of the day, I want something that's visual and it's non-negotiable. Because a lot of times you can look at a chart and say, oh, well, maybe it's going to do this. And I love this quote from Mark Douglas: consistent losers do almost everything to avoid accepting the reality that no matter how good a trade looks, it could lose. And so what I love about this, if you got this great long signal, okay, but the momentum goes over, at that point, there's no reason to get on. Instead of sitting there going, well, I really think it's going to go here. No, the momentum's changing. Get out. Okay, this is telling you that, hey, it could lose. It could roll over here and die. And so you don't have to fight your internal demons anymore. You can just do it like that. Save yourself from yourself. So the markets are designed specifically to manipulate our minds and get us to chase moves when they are about to end and to hold on to losing positions too long. It's just, if you don't have a plan and you're just following the prices, that's just basically what happens. That's just the way our brains are designed. And so to save yourself from yourself, the key is to combat this is having a system or a strategy with clear entry and exit points, so you will know when it is safe to get in and know when it's too late to get in, because you don't want to chase. There's always another trade, and know when to get out. And as you guys know, I do like those big trades once in a while, and they're certainly thrilling and exciting. I held half of this position overnight and I couldn't sleep that night. So, if that sets up again, I'll certainly take it, but I'd rather just have consistency. Okay. And I'm looking for, I've got 3 kids. I've got, they're in their prime years, 13, 11, and 9. I want to be able to have something that's simple enough to do on my cell phone. So I can sit there, I can talk to them, I can glance at my cell phone and see what's going on. So overall, I found this to be an amazing group of systems and tools in terms of getting more high probability at bats in the market. I do always like to test this stuff out before I start to use it in the room, and now you'll know why I'll start taking these new signals in the room. And although I'm still always on the lookout for home runs, my whole key is base hits. And if that momentum starts to change, then I can just get out. Now, here's where I got a little sick of this, is in terms of lost profits. And so I got the Qs here and then Amazon. But let's just say, and I was just kind of, and obviously this is back of the envelope math, and this is a little bit of making some assumptions here. But let's just say that I traded, I trade 10 lots at least all the time, and sometimes a lot more. Let's say I do 10 lots. Okay, so here's Amazon. And what you'll notice here is that at the normal, this is the mid, is the normal setting. Over the last 10 years, there have been 66 squeezes on the daily chart at that normal setting, with an average move of $75. So if I bought 10 Delta 70 options, okay, basically that's $75 times 0.7 times 10 contracts with 1,000 shares is about $53,000 per trade, had I just held it with the signals that we talked about. With the new setting, remember, this gives us more at bats, right? 108. Okay, so like 97% more signals, which is a little high. Usually it's more like 40%, but that was pretty astounding. Over 10 years on the daily chart with an average move of about the same, in fact, a little bit more. So same thing, that's 42 additional squeezes I could have caught, or $2.2 million in lost profits. Okay, so here I have this great system that I love. I love trading the squeeze, and by not having access to these settings, I basically left $2.2 million on the table, because Amazon is something I've actively traded for a long time. So it's like, okay, that's pretty frustrating. So if you like all this, when it comes to learning a new strategy or a new tool, it's best to dive in and get to know it intimately in a focused setting, so you don't have to experiment with trial and error, which obviously can cost you money. And it takes dedication to first learn how the system works and when to apply it in various market conditions. And of course, I think it requires real-time live market analysis in order to fully understand the functionality. All right. It's easy to look at slides like we are right now and say, look what would have happened. And that's important to understand, like, what it can do and what it's capable of and what it looks like. But I'm also a big believer of saying, let's do it in real time, and we can see how good it works then. So I'm going to do a deeper dive into all of this. Well, I say next Saturday, but that's like in 2 days, June 1st, and we'll have an opportunity to live trade together the next week as well. And as a bonus, all these tools are included in the various levels of the classes. So the low, mid, high, those are all, so it's basically with 12 different settings, and going through and figuring out which ones are back tested and which ones are working the best. It is just the high setting is a little bit more sensitive. The mid setting is, again, just kind of that midpoint, and then that low setting means you got to get really super tight in there. So how this is going to work, and I do have one surprise here for you guys, because if you do not want to pay for this now, we've got an option for this to do it with no money down as well, which we've never done before. So I'll show you that in a second. So the basic package here is basically we're going to do the strategy class on Saturday. Okay, it's going to start at noon Central. It will be recorded. This includes the Squeeze Pro indicator and Squeeze Pro buy-sell signals. Those in and of themselves are pretty powerful. If you're new to options, you get an Options 101 course to get up to speed. The Pro version includes all of this, plus that early in and out tool, plus 2 days of live trading. And then the Elite version includes, of course, all of this, plus an additional 3 days of live trading, plus the stats tool. Now, if you're seeing this, you can still do the early bird pricing and getting up to $200 off. You can see right now, basically, when we start the class on Saturday, this is going to $797, this is going to $1197, and this is going to $1697. So right now you can do $1497, $997, $697. And if you are just like, well, gosh, I've got a small account, or I need a little bit more time, we have, for the first time ever, set up an agreement with PayPal where you can do PayPal credit, and it's 6 months, no interest, and you can make minimum payments every month. And so the idea is like, hey, if you got a new tool like this, it gives you some time to work it out before you have to pay it. So that's why I like it. And even after 6 months, they'll still, it's like a credit card, you can still hold on to it with interest. But I like that, because I know that, sometimes like this, the tools are like, oh my God, those look awesome, but it's not a good time. And that's just a way to kind of help out there. Okay, so again, real quick, and then I'll stick around and answer questions as long as you guys want. So again, this Saturday, June 1st, we are going to teach the entire strategy for this class. Now, this is also going to include scans from TOS, so you can scan yourself, and radar screen tools from TradeStation. Those are also going to be included with this, okay? Originally, we weren't doing that because we didn't know if we could get it to work, but we did get it to work, so we'll get all that in there as well. So I think that'll be pretty awesome. So, again, this is not just the tool, it's how to use the tool. It's a trading plan around the tool. When do you get in? When do you get out? What time frames, et cetera, et cetera. And by the way, that's the URL, simplertrading.com/system. So the Squeeze Pro, you get the 3 dynamic filters in there and all that kind of fun stuff. And then from there, if you want to do the Pro package, it includes all of that, plus 2 days of live trading and that in and out tool. That's the one I call it fitting to move. Okay, so the Squeeze is fitting to go, and the momentum is fitting to change. So it helps you time the trade right and exit the trade right. And as you guys know, entries are a dime a dozen, but it's the exits that make you money. It's the exits that make you money. So that's so important. And then last but not least, if you want to go all in, this is what I would recommend for that, especially if you can use that PayPal option, is that you can still do the $200 off and get it for the $14.97, but this includes all indicators, all the scans, all of that stuff, plus 5 days of live trading over 2 weeks. So I think that's pretty amazing. Plus you get that really in-depth stat tool. Okay. Yeah, and then all right, so we'll go now. If you don't have Thinkorswim or TradeStation, like if you're using Schwab or something like that, one thing I would recommend is that, because we can't, for whatever reason, we can't get the indicators on Schwab or Fidelity or E-Trade or any of that. However, you can go to simplertrading.com/toss. That's for Thinkorswim. If you use our link, you can get discounted commissions. The platform is totally free, and then you can just dump our indicators on there. And I think you can put like $50 in the account. Again, they don't charge you anything. And then you can still trade on your preferred platform. But that's the way you get free data. The tools are on there. You can use them. And of course, it is a good platform. I mean, we do like the platform. But I understand that people would like to use a lot of times their own platform, which is totally fine. Okay, can I show you what it looks like on the TradeStation platform tonight? So I unfortunately don't have, Eric is just finishing that up. I have seen it, but I don't have it on my computer. The squeeze looks exactly the same. The arrows look exactly the same. The stats look exactly the same. It is pretty much the same thing. And I will be doing it with some there too. Yeah, in intraday charts, we were looking at, well, this is one we were looking at earlier. Even on something like QLYS, here's a 30-minute chart. So here you can see it's like, okay, you got a little bit of a 2-dot squeeze there. This is a little bit longer. You get the buy signal. Oh, it's fitting to go. It's fitting to go. Pop goes the weasel. There's another one setting up here. We got a buy signal this afternoon. So looking for another pop there. So yeah, I like it on, for intraday trading too, if you like to intraday trade. All right, so let me write down the dates here. Let me see how my handwriting is. Okay, so this is going to be Saturday, June 1st, and it's really 11 a.m. to about 4 p.m. Central, because Eric's going to start at 11 to really give a lowdown on the indicators themselves. So that's important. And then for the actual live trading, I guess I should grab my calendar and make sure that I get the dates right. Updated, blah, blah, blah. So we're going to have, here we go. So for the actual live trading days, it's going to be June 5th and 6th. And then for the elite, which includes, of course, everything on the left, we're going to have additional days of the 11th, 12th, and 14th. And it's, of course, during market hours. And of course, if you can't attend part of it, we'll record it. And generally, we've been setting it up for text alerts too. So, we obviously do a lot of active trading during the live trading. So that way you don't really miss anything. If you can't make it on June 1st, Olga, then a lot of people oftentimes already have plans on Saturday. So the beauty of that is we record the class and you can watch it at your convenience. But I will only be doing the class once. I mean, my goal with stuff like this is like, hey, this stuff's great. I'm using it. This is what I do. And if you can't attend it live, here's the recording. And then I go back to trading. You know what, Jay? They don't come with sound alerts. That's one thing I can ask Eric though, and to say like, okay, is that something that could be programmed in? I know we've done it before. Is this recorded so I could listen to it tomorrow? Yes, it is. What is the ProStats tool? So that's the one that shows, hey, there was 80 squeezes over the last year, and the average squeeze was $4. So it shows you all the statistics of the squeezes that have happened. how many were long, how many were short, what's the average amount of dots, what's the average move. So it gives you good intelligence, because you can sit there and say, what's the average move on a 2-hour chart of the NASDAQ? What's the average move on a 5-minute chart of the NASDAQ? What's the average move on a monthly chart of Amazon? Which is great. And then the indicators are in the process of being finalized, but of course you will have those before the class, so you can start to play around with them. The low, mid, and high indicates the sensitivity of the settings on the squeeze. And we'll talk about what all that means, of course. Can we change colors? Yeah, actually, once you have it, you can modify it, you can change colors, et cetera, et cetera. Would you prioritize the stats over the expected move? So actually, yes, because the expected move doesn't take into a squeeze. So the expected move takes in, the funny thing is that market makers do not understand the squeeze, and they do not price the squeeze into the options. So the early in and out indicator, Akeem, and I did go over that for about 5 minutes, but that's the one where it shows you, it tells you, it gives you a heads up when the squeeze is about to fire, so you can get in early, and it gives you a heads up when the momentum is about to change, so you can exit before the move really rolls over. Will you be teaching how to understand the momentum shift on the squeeze? Yes, that's actually a really nice part of it, Greg. It's kind of one of those nuances where the more you understand it, then the kind of the easier it is, for sure. Okay, let's see. Yeah, Joe, so the scans, I'm just going to include them during the Saturday class. So if you got Thinkorswim, stuff like that, because I know most of you guys have that. And we may actually look at adding them into our scanner as well. I mean, that's a process, but we have figured out the scanner. And so I just want to, if you guys are there, for those of you that are doing that, at least you have that and can run the scans. What is the cutoff time to buy? And so the idea here is that these early bird pricing is good right up until the time that the class starts. Once the class starts, then it goes higher. So you just, you've got about 48 hours-ish. What time does the 101 class start? Well, so the great thing here is that this is a recording. So if you're newer to options, that's something that you'll get, and you can review that at your leisure. And so I do recommend that if you're newer to options. So for the Saturday class, we're not going to be talking about anything too complicated, really just buying calls, buying puts, probably a few credit spreads. But during the live trading, we will certainly do some more complex stuff. And if you at least go through options 101, and I won't go fast or anything. We'll have all day. So, we'll go through and do that. Are alerts sent to the class only or to the gold member group? So it's just to the class, because what will happen here is I like to just kind of focus on the class. When the class is going on, I'm not going to be in the room because I've just got to focus on that. And then that way there's kind of, no confusion. And plus I don't burn myself out. Let's see here. All right, what else do we got here? All right, so I think that answers most of it. Oh, so how does the PayPal thing work? Okay, so the nice thing here is with PayPal, you don't have to apply for a line of credit or anything like that. Just when you go to add to the cart, choose the PayPal option, and then it'll just say PayPal credit. And what'll happen with that is you actually can do no money down, no interest for 6 months. And so I really like that option, just because I know, there's sometimes it's like you're sitting there going wow, I love those tools, but it'd be easier if I could pay it off, maybe no payments for the next couple of months, and then $100 a month, and then just have a little bit more time. And so we've never done that before, and so you guys have to let us know. But I think it's a really good service that they set up in terms of doing that. PayPal doesn't work with international clients based in Australia. Oh, really, Jenny? That's the first time I've ever heard that. You may totally be right, but I have not heard that before. I thought PayPal worked with everyone. Or New Zealand. Okay. Sorry. Yeah. Sorry. I did not know that. Okay. Let's see here. Is the new squeeze indicator available for immediate download? So it will be ready tomorrow. There's still a couple of tweaks, a couple of tools we're adapting just so they all go out at the same time. Become a Yank, mate. Oh, well, that's interesting. Okay, so yeah, I did not know that. I thought, yeah, I for some reason I thought PayPal was universal. So maybe next time around we will. I don't know if what works in other countries and stuff like that. That's something we learn as we go. So, yeah, no worries, Mr. Bill. Let's see here. Yeah, no, and I think the idea here, and of course, the markets here, this whole, tweet thing, of course, is making things more interesting. But I do know that when things get really volatile like that, sometimes it is easier to focus on those 15 and 30-minute moves. Sometimes the swing trading can be a little hairy, but ultimately, things kind of just play out. Will you do this class again in the future? So, Michelle, I basically just do classes one time. So I just putting together a class like this is a lot of work. So I do it once, I do the best job that I can, and then I'm done. Woodstock, so that's a good question. How will the Squeeze Pro impact early indicators like the multi-squeeze tool? So, the triple squeeze, the multi-squeeze. So you know what? That's a good question. And and I've got the multi-squeeze tool on my chart right now, and right now it's just kind of the older version. So you know what? That's a great question, and then that's actually the first time I've thought about it. That's probably though something where, we'll go through the scans and stuff like that. Make sure you guys have all of that, and then that's some of the stuff that we can look at as well. So Alexander, so it's a good question. So what happens is that we definitely do TOS and TradeStation first. Those are the two that are typically the most popular, or in terms of people that we talk to. And it's not easy to program for each one. From there, we start looking at other platforms such as Ninja, Sierra. They come a little bit later in the queue is the only issue there, just because it's not, it's an armful to get them programmed for each one. MTF on TOS Mobile, yeah. Yeah, and in JM, no worries. And there's no, of course, on something like this, it's always like, hey, this is something cool that we like. And if you look at it and say, oh, that makes sense, great. Or if not, that's totally fine too. It's more just to kind of let you know what's available. What about the Tasty Work? So we've been just now starting to make headway with them in terms of them programming our indicators on there. But right now they're not. They've just they're doing a lot of development work, and we're just we're not at the front of the queue. Why do you need the quick stats when you have the in and out? So Alex, it's a good question. The quick stats, if you're just a little bit more anal like me, I like to sit there and say, oh, if the average squeeze is $75, then if it goes up $75, I should at least sell half no matter what. So I personally like it for planning, but of course, it's not something everybody kind of gets into, but I always like to know I was a history major, so I like to see what's happened in the past so I can plan for the future. And the Squeeze Pro, it basically tells you hey, if you put your squeeze on a daily chart for 10 years, it'll tell you, all right, there have been 87 squeezes, 62 were long, 24, whatever the number is, were short, and the average one was $48. So it just tells you oh, well, this is going to be a worthwhile one to do. Because if it says, oh yeah, it had these squeezes, but the average one was 50 cents, it's oh, well, that sucks. you can see that the squeeze sucks on that chart. So don't do it. So what's nice about that is you can actually go back, like, or on a 30-minute chart, does the squeeze work on it? 30 minutes for a year. Wow, the average squeeze is 47 points on the NASDAQ. Oh my God, yeah, I'm totally taking these signals. So what's nice is it's kind of it's not necessarily a try before you trade, but you get some good intel of going like, is this a worthwhile use of my time to trade this market on this time frame? Yeah, so it'll start at 11 a.m. So 11 a.m. for the indicator setup, and then noon for the actual strategy class. So does it eliminate the old squeeze completely? So the old squeeze is actually incorporated into the Squeeze Pro. So it's kind of like the Squeeze Pro is like 3 layers. So the old squeeze is not being thrown out with the bathwater. It's actually still in there. It's just that you've got additional signals that are also incredibly high probability and just give you more at-bats. No, I mean, it won't replace the put call or the tick, because those are based on internal pressures. So those will still be an important part of looking at the markets. Can the squeeze stats tool tell the average number of dots on the squeezes? Yes. Yeah. And so that's kind of a fun part of it as well. If we look at here, let me see if I can grab it real quick. Well, that's just a summary one, but yeah, so you'll see the average number of dots, the average move. So yeah, it's a lot of good information like that. To Jerry, mods, where are these questions being posted? We see them. So we, as you guys are posting them, we see it scroll by. So Sharon, if you bought the squeeze from TradeStation, I believe, so I don't know exactly how they do it, Sharon. I think at TradeStation, it's just like a monthly, is it like a monthly subscription or something like that? But let us know. I mean, we know them pretty well and can talk to them. Do you avoid earnings announcements? I generally avoid earnings announcements. They are a crapshoot. Sometimes if there is a squeeze going into earnings, maybe hold drum sue, but there is, it's like anything can happen, right? With the squeezes, anything can happen with earnings. What's better to use for targets, stats or fib tools? So yeah, so the stat, what I'll do is if the stat, let's say again, talking about Amazon, if the average is $75, I'm also going to throw up some fib lines, and just things like that, just so I can see what's out there. And but that average move to me has been very, very helpful. Are you doing the live day trading sessions? Yes. So I'll be doing about 4.5 hours of trading each day. You usually take about an hour and a half or two for lunch because, it's a lot of intense. And then typically I'll also bring on, one other person each day for like an hour. Sometimes people like, oh, I want to learn about butterflies. Well, great. We'll talk about that. This person's way better than that than me, or I want to learn about this and stuff like that too. So just to be clear, is the Squeeze Pro tool going to be mailed out, or will it automatically be applied to the accounts that have signed up for the Pro package? Okay, so Charles, it's a good question, and if someone can tell me if I'm answering this wrong, but basically what will happen is you'll buy the class, and then sometime tomorrow, you'll get an email notifying you that the tools are ready, and you can go into the class with your login and download them. That's typically how we do it. If it's different this time, somebody let me know. But that's typically what happens. Is it better on intraday and long, or I use $10. I mean, I like it on, like we were looking at examples before, daily charts, great. Monthly charts, great. 30-minute charts, great. So I personally don't trade like a lot of 5-minute charts. I would rather, the lowest time frame I look at is like 30 minutes, and it's only because I just don't want to get into a trade and be out of it in 20 minutes. Now, before I had kids, I did that all the time. So if you have the time to do it, great. But, I typically like those. I like looking for a little bit bigger swings, but I'll take 30-minute signals. I like those. How do I upgrade to Elite if I already paid for Pro? So Mike, it's a good question. I don't think we have a link for that, but if you just email support@simplertrading.com, they can get you hooked up. We could, and they could get you hooked up for that. Have you developed scans for these new setups? Yes. So yeah, if you're using especially Thinkorswim, I'll include those scans Saturday as well. Tom, I have not tried them with Renko charts. I like Renko charts, but I haven't really done squeezes with Renko charts. Is there a pay plan? So yes, Gary. So if you go to the cart, and what'll happen is you'll see an option for PayPal, and if you click on that, it'll say use PayPal credit, and that is 6 months interest free, and you can make whatever minimum payment you want. And after 6 months, it just starts charging interest if you haven't paid it off yet. But it's nice because obviously that's a nice way to do it. John, after the live trading sessions are over, will the traders in the options gold room be using this tool? Yes. So Tech, so of course, we're going to, all of you that are going to do the deep dive with me will be doing it. And then, I'm just going to, when I get back into the gold room, I'm going to be doing all those tools there. So, we'll continue to do those. Does this work on Forex? It does work very, very well on currencies as well. So if you like, whether you trade spot or futures, anything like that, it's pretty solid. I mean, if we look at, again, on currencies, I typically like the bigger time frames, daily charts and things like that too. But, even if you look at something like, a 2-hour chart or anything like that, like here's the euro. So this is the euro, and you can see, there was a squeeze here, and you got a big move, squeeze here, another squeeze setting up here. And so, you kind of get that nice ebb and flow action going. Will there be support if I have questions in the futures? Yep. So just, actually I'll put our email up here if you don't have it. So if you have questions about the class or anything, you can just, of course, email us, and it's just support at simplertrading.com. And then this is the link that you go to. And good question. Where is the class? So the class is going to be online just like this. So you don't need to get a plane ticket. You don't need to make hotel reservations. You don't need to shell out money for lodging. So it'll be just like this. You could actually watch it on your computer or your iPhone or your iPad. It's kind of nice that way. So it's very flexible that way. All right. Shepherd. He's like, oh, I'm already camped outside the office. All right, guys. Yeah, options 101, Eric, is just that if you're newer to options and you're not really sure, that's a video that you can watch at your convenience just to make sure that you're up to speed on options. Now, guess what? We will, if you just trade stocks, this is totally fine just for stocks. What I do is, like, if I'll see a long signal on Apple, I could buy Apple stock, or I could buy call options on Apple, right? So that's kind of what I do. Is the absolute analysis, we're not doing Greeks, you don't need to know deltas or thetas or vegas or any of that. All of our analysis is on the underlying stock. So maybe it's the euro, right? So if the euro's got a signal, we could buy euro futures, we could buy spot Forex, or we could buy the FXE ETF, or we could buy calls on the ETF. Most of the time I end up doing options on the underlying equity, but I also will look at some futures trades and looking at stocks. The beauty of this, again, not complicated. You don't need to look at any of the math behind the options. All the analysis is on whatever you like to trade. If you like trading Disney, guess what? When there's a signal on Disney, you could buy Disney stock, or you could buy calls on Disney stock, or if you're a little bit more advanced, you could sell a put credit spread, on Disney stock, all kinds of fun things like that. All right. Bought it on PayPal. Took only about 2 minutes. Okay, awesome. So that worked out good. All right, guys. Well, thank you. It's been about almost an hour and a half, so I don't want to take up too much of your time tonight. First of all, thank you guys for joining us. I'll put the dates back on here so you have those. And then obviously, if you have any questions, send us an email, support@simpler. 5th and 6th, and then June, I got TradeStation freaking out on me here, 11th, 12th, and 14th. On the 7th, on the night of the 6th, I'm flying to Oakland with my oldest son. We're going to go see Game 4 of the NBA Finals. He doesn't know that yet, but he's been, so after the class is over, I will hop in the car and go to the airport, which should be kind of fun. June 1st, and that'll be, 11 a.m. for indicators, and then 12 noon for strategy. You know what, Nick? I actually wanted to go to Toronto. That was my first choice, but the dates didn't work. Like I can't go June 5th or 6th, right? that wouldn't have been good. Yes, and this is all Central Time. And then of course this is going to be during, market hours. Yep, and the strategy class will be recorded because I know Saturday, if you guys already have plans, it's not necessarily fun to sit around on a Saturday and talk about trading if you've got other plans. So you can certainly have the recording and watch it at your leisure, like on Monday or something like that. Yeah, I think it's fun. Whew. All right, guys. Well, thanks again for joining us. All the info's here. I think you're really, really going to like this. I'm super excited about it. It's been years since we put together what I would just call a complete system like this, a complete overhaul of something that works, not just an indicator, but an entire system and a strategy around it that I think you can plan around. So I'm excited about it. We got the scans, we got all that fun stuff. And yeah, no, awesome, Kelly. Yeah, Memorial Day is important. So, all right, guys. Well, thanks again. Have a good night. And then, yeah, we'll see what tomorrow brings with the next tweet and Trump war and go from there. So you guys have a good one, and we will see you on the other side.